What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another drive along. If you're new here to the channel, my name's Avi. I'm here with my man
Joe Parker. Hey everybody.
And we are local Santa Barbara realtors. We love making videos, educating you about the community, educating you about Santa Barbara real estate, what's new in town, and everything in between. If you're watching this video, you're probably curious about what's going on in Santa Barbara, whether it's real estate related or just, general news. You're in the right place. We've been selling real estate now, me personally, for about 8 years. Joe coming up on 20 plus?
Yeah, 24.
Yeah.
I'm just doing my renewal. I just have to renew my license, which you do every 4 years.
Nice.
So I think it's my sixth renewal.
Yep. I've sold a handful of properties, and Joe has sold a lot of properties. It's fun driving down the street with him because it's like, oh, I sold that one, I sold that one, I sold that one. And we know this market really well. We know this town really well, and we love sharing it with you guys. So thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing, dropping a thumbs up. We're checking out some new properties today, but we kind of want to talk about what's going on in the market. Very beginning of July. And yeah, I'm excited for July 4th this weekend. And there's definitely some unique things that are going on in the market, and I thought you guys might want to be filled in. I was telling Joe recently, I had clients who reached out. I sold them a condo, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. Back when you could get a 3-bedroom condo. I think we got it for right over $700K in a good part of town. Now you definitely can't
What
get.
part of town is it?
It's pretty close to the office. It's
okay.
off of the 154, that little community. There's actually a cool story. I don't know if you remember. Our friend Laurel had the listing. It was under contract. We missed out, but we stayed in contact with them. And as it started to fall out, we submitted an offer to get up in backup position. The buyers, they were, kind of trying to nickel and dime them, and Laurel issued a notice of reform, and they dipped out, and we got it in backup position because it had like 5 or 6 offers. So
nice.
We were stoked on that. And yeah, so what happened at their community? The HOA dues, I believe, have doubled in the past year due to insurance doubling, basically. They have a pool, they have some amenities. There's not a lot of amenities, and I believe they have trash covered, so it covers some things, but the HOAs have gone up substantially. Plus, I'm going to meet with them next week to learn exactly why, but they've had an emergency, an additional, I don't know if it's going to be like a one-time assessment or like an assessment paid out over a couple payments, but yeah, they're going to have some additional payments, which they're not stoked about. And so what we're going to do is we're going to meet with them, see if we could potentially sell it and get them into a different HOA. I think the issue is their HOA, the units were built in the 80s, so I think the insurance on that's much more difficult. I think some of the newer construction, the HOAs are more locked in with insurance because they're not as old.
Right.
And yeah, we're going to see what we can do for them. Have you experienced anything like that? Clients having issues with insurance or HOAs bumping up?
Yeah, I mean, interesting that we just came from that new condo on La Cumbra, and he was saying that the dues were $420, and they have a pool, spa, and they take care of the exterior maintenance, which this day and age is really inexpensive for HOA dues. It seems like on average they're getting up to about $700 a month, and a lot of that's driven by those insurance costs going up, also the cost of construction going up, so that they do these reserve studies to kind of anticipate what their costs are going to be according to the wear and tear on the buildings and the expected life of the different systems like roofs and siding and all these different things. And I don't think these reserve studies anticipated the way that prices were going to go up for labor and materials. So they're blowing through their reserves on these fixes that they thought they had dialed in, but because things have gotten so expensive over the last 5 years in the construction world, that's also, so they're getting hit from multiple angles. And then in addition to that, they have additional requirements coming down the pipe with like regards to balconies being inspected and having to be updated and retrofitted whenever those inspections show that they're not up to speed, and that's triggering construction, which is triggering spending of reserves, and then ultimately looking for the owners to kick in with special assessments.
Totally. It's tough. I mean, I would just say that a lot of people, if you want to do some digging into the HOA, well, obviously when you're under contract, and even if you can do some digging in before, have an understanding of the reserves, have an understanding of special assessments are coming up. And for the people that really don't want to have to deal with an HOA at all, obviously you're going to want to stick to single family homes, but there's a premium when you're going to do that, because definitely the single family home market demands a premium. So
yeah, and you're not going to get away from these costs just because you scoot over to a single family home. You're going to have to fix that home it's going to cost you a ton of money, just like the HOAs are paying a ton, because that's just the nature of the market. You're also going to have to pay a ton for your insurance, and so you're going to be on the hook for the whole insurance bill, and it's going up for homeowners as well. So you can't outrun these factors that are impacting the HOAs and their fees. Owners are going to deal with it too. And something I like to remind people about HOAs is that those expenses you pretty much have as a homeowner. It may be more each month because you've got a predictable monthly payment for your improvements to the property minus the special assessments. That's kind of the unknown in it all, which you can kind of dive into. I mean, I know that when we're working with buyers and reviewing, we're in escrow on a condo, the secret is to really dive into the minutes from the association meetings. That's where you're going to learn about any of these potential assessments coming up, or any struggles they're having with people paying their dues, or be able to review those reserve studies that they've done.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just talk about a personal anecdote, but a lot of people are anti-HOA, but in my HOA, last year we had the whole exterior get painted, didn't have to do any special assessment because we had solid reserves. I mean, to do your whole exterior of your house, what? Yeah. 10 grand or so, I mean, at least, maybe
people
more.
Get whole roofs replaced from their HOA, and if they're run well, they're not paying any assessments for that. So there are a lot of benefits to it.
For sure. So, speaking about the market in general, where would you say things are at right now? I feel like personally it's interesting where I just had one client, we wrote an offer on a single family fixer on the west side, kind of an up and coming location, entry level. And I believe it got over 7 or 8 offers and went $200,000 over the list price. And it kind of just felt a little bit discouraging because we haven't seen that activity. I would say is not the norm, but it definitely is still happening here and there, right?
Yeah, selectively. I mean, that house, it was in on the west side, so that's the kind of a premier entry-level neighborhood for Santa Barbara. So there's a lot of buyers out there that are kind of in that price point, and it was priced so low that it had to get hammered with activity. And it just goes to show, like, these sellers that have the courage to underprice their property are being rewarded so handsomely. Like, that thing probably sold for more than what it probably would have had it just been priced at, like,
market value,
$1.4 million, $1.450. I think it was priced at $1.2 million.
$1.3 million, like $1.295 million.
Okay, yeah. So that's interesting, and you just see, like, everybody's wanting the same properties, and that's starting to condense into just a few areas around town, it feels like.
Yeah.
So those are, super challenging because we're in this market where it feels like it's becoming more of a buyer's market, but then those situations are a total seller's market situation.
For sure.
And it's hard to change gears.
It can be hard for our buyer clients to be seeing certain things sit on the market. Then they get excited about one, thinking, oh, I could at least get this for maybe list price. Like we wrote for slightly over list price, but I felt pretty good about it. And then we got blown out of the water. Well, some of our other listings, some of our other friends' listings, when they're not priced right, are sitting without any calls or any activity because pricing right now is like more sensitive than I feel like I've ever experienced.
Yeah, and you could price it right according to the data in some of these areas that are less popular right now, like up in the foothills and stuff. That it seems to be priced right according to data, but not getting action.
Yep. I feel like you had a really good analogy on our recent email newsletter. By the way, guys, we put out 2 newsletters a month. One is about Santa Barbara, what's happening, what's kind of new in the market, and then the other one's super real estate specific. You said the market was like a bouncing ball.
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain that for people that didn't read that one?
Well, yeah, like those super bounce balls, when you throw them, they kind of don't bounce they're kind of erratic. They kind of go in different directions and all this stuff, and it kind of feels like the market's doing that in the sense that some neighborhoods are hot, some that were hot are cooling down. What I'm thinking about right now is the Mesa. The Mesa was kind of always been popular, and then West Mesa kind of got really popular and was kind of catching up, it felt like, to the Marine Terrace area. And now it's kind of gone the other way, where people are kind of not looking at West Mesa anymore, and they all want the Marine Terrace. And so it's just kind of, that's an example of, like, one section's kind of hot, picking up, and then it just cools off for no reason or no apparent reason. Like the Riviera has a ton of listings right now that are available and that aren't selling, and it's got amazing views, and that's been a really popular area. 3 years ago, you could just put any price on them and they would just go nuts, and so now it's cooled down. So it's just this erratic behavior of the market where it's really hard to make sense of it, and the data doesn't help you when you study it, because you're seeing a lot of mixed signals. So all those mixed signals kind of remind me of that erratic bounce of that ball.
Yeah, and I'll tell another kind of personal story. I feel like how two of my clients have kind of used this to their advantage, the erraticness, where this other one that we put under contract a couple weeks ago was priced very aggressively. It's a townhouse, and there are other homes in this exact same community that have sold for significantly more. It hit the market, I believe, on a Tuesday or Wednesday. We came in with a slightly over asking offer on Friday. They wanted to give it through the weekend to give it more exposure. And because we came in a little bit aggressive early, I feel like we warded off a lot of other offers, because a lot of buyers are seeing the marketplace and being like, oh, I don't want to compete with other offers. Like, there's stuff that's sitting, and it just doesn't feel fair that with other properties that are getting price reduced, I won't want to compete. So we ended up kind of shielding out any other offers because we came in early, we came in with good price, and we got it under contract. And I feel like if we had waited, if we were kind of like just writing an offer a little bit under asking, tried it a nickel and dime, I feel like we would have lost out on that one. But that's a strategy that happened both once. So we were representing buyers on that one, and then also we closed a condo just where we passed. We just drove by Las Positas, and we closed one there, and the buyers, we represented the sellers, but the buyers did the same thing, where they came in strong, they came in early, and I had insane activity at the open houses. But because people were asking, hey, do you have any offers yet? And I said, yes, we have a really strong offer. Everyone else kind of bowed out.
That's interesting. Yeah, that is a great point. I mean, some of these listings, like the one that you were talking about on the west side, another one that I wrote an offer on the Mesa, got blown up. People weren't afraid to throw their hat in the ring and compete for it, right? And then there's these condos and other properties around town where people shy away from the competition. That's just enough to where, like, I like it, but I don't want to get in a bidding war, so I'll just be patient and wait. And that's a big sentiment, I think, with buyers. There's a lot of non-urgency, a lot of patience. Unless they have to find something, to actually live in, they're, fulfilling an actual need they have of housing, they're going to be, I think, a little bit more hesitant and a little bit more patient. They're showing that, and that's, a great strategy to tap into that. A lot of people don't want to get into a bidding war.
For sure. I feel like this market is a lot less aggressive than it was 2 or 3 years ago, and so if you're looking to buy a house, you can really use that to your advantage by just bringing in a little bit more of an aggressive strategy, like basically, let's say, going in early. If the house was, even set to review offers on Monday, if you bring an offer in on a Friday, oftentimes that little bit of extra work can wield off a lot of the other, potential lookers, because they're going to say, we don't want to compete against multiple offers. We're just going to wait. We're not feeling like, the market is as aggressive, and we're going to look for things that are price reduced. But that's why my clients are so stoked, and we definitely thought we were going to have to go kind of to battle and have to beat out other offers, and we didn't, which feels really good. And now we just got, almost a $10,000 credit because there's no other offers in. And so that's another thing to remember is, you're going to have a lot more leverage when you don't have a bunch of offers behind you, and you have a lot more negotiating room. And it's nice to be on that side where I can help my buyers now get a nice credit to pay for closing costs and repairs that need to be done.
Yeah, a lot more negotiation going on in escrow with the sellers. The buyers are able to, show what they found out about the house, and the prospect of going on the market is so devaluating that you could almost always get some kind of money, credit, something repaired, new price, all that kind of stuff is happening.
Yep, a lot of pros right now on the buy side.
And there's quite a bit of more fallout. The number of canceled escrows has definitely increased. So
let's talk about predictions moving forward. It's crazy to think, we're halfway through just about 2025. A lot of people have been waiting for interest rates to drop, and they're saying, when are they going to drop? And it seems like we don't have any clear indication that they're going to drop soon, right?
No, it really doesn't seem like it. Even today there was more positive news about more job creation than initially thought. So that jobs report got bumped up to more jobs creating, and that doesn't help argument to bring rates down.
Mm-hmm.
So that, we need bad economic news to bring rates down. Inflation doesn't seem to be moving much. So I don't know. I think we're going to kind of see like rates stay the same throughout the year. And a lot of people have kind of moved away from, I think, waiting and anticipating that they're going to change, and that's when they're going to take action. But some still are.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely some still are. And there's definitely a bunch of inventory that remains locked up because people won't get rid of their low interest rates in order to get a different house.
Yep.
They're like, they want to move, but they love that lower interest rate. It just doesn't make financial sense to move, so they just make do with what they got.
Yeah, I think one thing too that's so interesting, I feel like it's happening all around the country. Like I was just on the East Coast, and my girlfriend's grandma, she's been at that house for 50 years. I feel like the older generation is not leaving their houses that they've bought in so many years ago, even if they've outgrown the house.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe unless there's a medical issue and it's like a dual level, but I feel like that's really holding back the supply, is that a lot of people, instead of downsizing, instead of moving to a retirement community, they're kind of just choosing to stay at the house that they bought 50 years ago.
Yeah.
I just feel like supply is the main issue that's keeping prices where they're at. People are there's always a new article saying why here comes the next housing crash. Here's when housing prices are going to go down. And yes, while we've seen some people, who maybe overpaid in 2022 or 23 try to resell for the same price or more, it hasn't worked out. The majority of the time, the prices are staying the same or increasing. And I think a lot of people who waited and missed that last bump are kicking themselves and just being like, when are prices going to drop down to where they were in 2020? And it's like there's just not nearly enough supply to make that happen.
Yeah, I don't really see it happening. I mean, definitely across the country, real estate is transitioning. Supply is growing in general. Prices are showing signs of starting to come down, more so in other communities. But we see it here even within the Santa Barbara real estate market. There's a lot of little sub-markets, and you do see some price reductions, some loss of value, some values lower than where they were a year and a half ago. So that is in the marketplace. But in general, when you look at across the averages and everything, because of the high demand stuff still pushing to those next high sales marks, that is dragging the data up. And so it becomes really hard. Like these properties that are losing value get lost in the mix and kind of the noise of these properties that are still pushing new record sales prices.
Mm-hmm.
Because like we have one small market in the Santa Barbara area here that has both of those scenarios playing out in one little marketplace. So that's I think it will continue to be like that. We could see more across the board values maybe soften a little bit, but with the inventory still where it's at and demand where it's at, I think it's going to be really hard for that scenario to get much traction.
For sure. Wrapping up, I would say, what advice would you give someone? Let's say they're a young buyer, they've been renting for a while, they're ready to strike, but they just feel like they don't want to buy at the top or buy at the wrong time, or maybe they should wait for interest rates to come down or for prices to come down. Whether or not they're a first-time buyer or someone who's just been looking for a while, what advice would you give to that kind of group? Because I feel like that group definitely signifies a large percentage of people right now.
Yeah. I would say if you're a believer in home ownership versus renting and you don't own something now, don't worry about trying to time things or worrying about it being an optimal investment, because it's serving a function in your life that you're going to need and ultimately will help you grow your wealth over the years. So take a step back from trying to be expert at timing it just right, making the best investment choice that you can, trying to time the market. All those things, just get yourself into something that you own, that you're living in, that you're paying yourself and not paying someone else, that you're able to create tax deductions for yourself so that you do better with your taxes. You're able to pay down principal so that you're paying yourself and not just your landlord. And you're able to have something that appreciates. And even if this market after you buy it goes down for a couple years, as long as you don't sell it, it will eventually come back up, right? And so you're serving a function of your life, you're living in your investment. So I'd say take some of that pressure off to time it right, get into something as soon as you can that you own, and hopefully if things do turn, you don't have to sell it. You could ride that out.
Totally. Don't over leverage no matter what time you're buying. And I mean, I always just like to tell personal stories. I bought at the back end of 2021. I bought at the high at the time. I had to beat out another offer, and I had to overpay. I had to pay more than the home was even listed for. And obviously at the time, it doesn't feel great to think, oh man, am I overpaying? I have to pay more than they're even asking. But now looking back, it was like the best decision I ever made.
Yeah.
And I've made so much equity, and it's, turned out to be great. I know when you bought your property at the time, it was probably, close to where the highs were, and now look at where prices are at. I mean, it's always one of those things, you always hear those stories, and if history continues to do what it does, and history oftentimes repeats itself, the market over time goes up and up. So appreciate that insight. If you're new to the channel, if you liked what we do, throw it a thumbs up. We have a lot of good content coming soon on Joe's channel. Just about every week, he's doing drive-alongs and in-depth property tours, showing you guys the new things that are on the market, showing you the best new listings, whether it's the high end, whether it's the entry level, a little bit of everything. So check out his channel, Joe Parker on YouTube. We appreciate you guys driving along with us, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right, everyone.
Take care.